Khabib's Bodyguard teaches the 5-second technique that ended 30-plus. Street fights. There's a man who stands behind Khabib Nurmagomedov everywhere he goes. 6'4", 250 pounds of Dagestani muscle. His name is Rizvan, and in 30-plus real street confrontations across 3 continents, he's never thrown a single punch. Instead, he uses a 5-second technique that ends every fight before it starts. Today, you're going to learn exactly what he does and why it works when everything else fails. The casino floor in Las Vegas was loud, chaotic, filled with the sounds of slot machines and drunken celebration. It was October 2018, just days after Khabib had defeated Conor McGregor in the most watched fight in UFC history. The tension from that post-fight brawl still hung in the air everywhere Khabib went. Rizvan Magomedov stood 3 feet behind his client, scanning the crowd with the kind of situational awareness that comes from years of training and dozens of real encounters. At 6'4" and 250 pounds, Rizvan wasn't just big. He was precisely trained, a product of the brutal Dagestani combat system that prioritized survival over sport. Most people assumed Rizvan's job was simple: be intimidating, look scary, keep people away. They were wrong. Rizvan's actual job was far more complex and far more dangerous. To neutralize threats in seconds, in any environment, without creating the kind of spectacle that would land his client in legal trouble or on the front page of tabloids. The drunk man stumbling toward Khabib didn't care about any of that. He was probably in his 30s, wearing an expensive suit that suggested money, but body language that screamed insecurity and liquid courage. His friends were behind him, phones out, recording, egging him on. "Khabib. Hey, Khabib," the man slurred, weaving through the casino crowd. "You're a bitch. Conor's gonna—" He never finished the sentence. What happened next took exactly 5 seconds. To the untrained eye, it looked like nothing dramatic. No punches were thrown. No one hit the ground. There was no violence in the Hollywood sense. But within those 5 seconds, the entire dynamic shifted so completely that the drunk man's friends stopped recording, grabbed their buddy, and disappeared into the crowd. This is the technique Rizvan has used over 30 times in real confrontations across Las Vegas, Moscow, Abu Dhabi, and a dozen other cities. And this is exactly how it works. Second 1. The interception. The first rule Rizvan learned in Dagestan wasn't about fighting. It was about distance management. In the mountains, his instructor, a former Soviet Special Forces operator named Magomed, taught a principle that contradicts everything Western self-defense teaches. Never let space exist between you and a threat. Most bodyguards create barriers. They step between their client and the aggressor, using their body as a wall. This creates a standoff, a confrontation, a moment where the aggressor can choose to escalate or retreat. It gives them agency. It gives them time to think, to posture, to make the situation worse. Rizvan does the opposite. The moment the drunk man got within 12 feet, the critical distance Rizvan has memorized through hundreds of hours of training, Rizvan moved. Not toward Khabib to create a barrier, toward the threat. He closed the distance in one smooth, fast step, bringing himself within 2 feet of the drunk man before the man's alcohol-slowed brain could process what was happening. This violates the drunk man's personal space so aggressively, so unexpectedly, that it triggers an instant neurological response, confusion, and hesitation. The drunk man stopped mid-step, his momentum broken, his brain trying to reconcile why this massive man was suddenly in his face when he'd been targeting someone else entirely. 1 second elapsed. Second 2. The posture. Here's where most people, even trained fighters, make a critical mistake. They square up. They put their hands up in a fighting stance. They prepare for combat. Rizvan did none of those things. Instead, he positioned his body at a 45-degree angle to the drunk man, his left shoulder closer, his right side slightly back. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides, not clenched into fists, not raised defensively. To casino cameras and witnesses, he looked like he was just standing there, but the positioning was devastatingly strategic. The 45-degree angle meant Rizvan's center line, the vulnerable straight line running from his chin to his groin, wasn't exposed. If the drunk man threw a wild punch, which drunk men often do, he'd be hitting Rizvan's shoulder or arm, not his face or body. The angled stance also meant Rizvan's right hand, his power hand, was coiled back and ready without looking threatening. More importantly, this positioning meant Rizvan's entire body mass was between the drunk man and Khabib. Not like a wall, but like a gravitational force. The drunk man's eyes, which had been locked on Khabib, were now forced to acknowledge Rizvan. The target had changed. His hand staying down sent another message. I'm not fighting you. I'm not threatened by you. This psychological positioning is crucial. Raised hands mean engagement, preparation, acknowledgement that a fight might happen. Hands down means confidence so absolute it borders on disrespect. The drunk man's friends noticed this. One of them, slightly less drunk, tugged on his buddy's sleeve. Yo, let's just... 2 seconds elapsed. Second 3. The voice. Rizvan speaks 7 languages fluently. Russian, Chechen, Arabic, Turkish, Avar, English, and enough Spanish to navigate most situations. But what he says matters far less than how he says it. His voice dropped, not to a whisper, but to a low, even tone that forced the drunk man to focus to hear it over the casino noise. This is deliberate. Yelling escalates. Whispering creates intimacy and control. Brother, Rizvan said, the word carrying no warmth despite its friendly connotation. You need to walk away now. The word choice was specific. Brother creates a false familiarity, a brief moment where the drunk man's brain processes a connection that doesn't exist. It's a verbal sleight of hand. You need to, instead of you should, removes negotiation. It's not a suggestion. It's a statement of fact. Walk away gives a clear, simple action. Drunk brains struggle with complex instructions. Leave the area or stop bothering us are too vague. Walk away is binary. You either do it or you don't. Now creates urgency and finality. But here's the critical element. While Rizvan said this, his eyes never left the drunk man's eyes. Not in an aggressive stare down, but in unblinking clinical assessment. He wasn't angry. He wasn't emotional. He was simply evaluating. Predators recognize this look. It's the look of something deciding whether you're worth the effort of attacking. And drunk or not, the human hindbrain recognizes it too. The drunk man's bravado cracked. His shoulders, which had been puffed up, dropped slightly. His hands, which had been gesturing wildly, fell to his sides. 3 seconds elapsed. Second 4. The pressure. This is where Rizvan's Dagestani training becomes most evident. In the mountains, in the brutal training sessions that start when boys are 6 years old, there's a concept called smesh pressure. Not the wrestling pressure Khabib is famous for, but psychological pressure that makes fighting seem impossible before it starts. Rizvan took one more step forward. Just 6 inches. Nothing aggressive. Nothing that surveillance cameras would flag, but enough that he entered what psychologists call the intimate zone, the space within 18 inches where only lovers, family, or threats exist. The drunk man instinctively took a half step back. Didn't even realize he did it. But that backward step was surrender. His body had made a decision his drunk mind hadn't caught up to yet. Rizvan's right hand, which had been relaxed at his side, moved slightly forward, not raised, not threatening, but positioned at his hip in a way that suggested readiness. To a trained eye, this was the chamber position for a devastating body shot or the grip position for a clinch that would end with the drunk man face down on casino carpet in 2 seconds. But the drunk man wasn't a trained eye. He just saw a massive hand that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. and his brain filled in the blanks with every bar fight he'd ever seen. 4 seconds elapsed. Second 5, the exit. The drunk man's friend grabbed his arm. "Dude, seriously, let's go." The drunk man nodded, still maintaining a shred of pride, still trying to save face. "Whatever, man. Not worth it. Khabib's a—" Rizvan's hand moved to the drunk man's shoulder. Not gripping, not pushing. Just landing there. Heavy. Undeniable. The drunk man stopped talking mid-sentence. "Walk," Rizvan said. One word. Not a request. And the drunk man walked. His friends followed, phones down, bravado evaporated. Within 10 seconds, they disappeared into the casino crowd, probably already constructing a story about how they totally could have, but decided not to. Khabib, who had watched the entire interaction with the mild interest of someone who'd seen Rizvan do this dozens of times, went back to his conversation. Casino security, who had started moving toward the situation, stopped and returned to their positions. Surveillance cameras recorded an incident that would never be reviewed because nothing reviewable had happened. 5 seconds, no punches, no violence, no arrest, no lawsuit, no headlines. Total time from threat identification to resolution. Approximately 15 seconds. But the critical technique, the 5-second sequence from interception to exit, is what Rizvan has refined through more than 30 real encounters. Let's break down why it works when traditional approaches fail. The psychology behind the technique. Most self-defense training teaches escalation management. De-escalate through words, create distance, prepare to defend if necessary, fight as a last resort. This works in controlled environments or with rational opponents. Street confrontations, especially those involving alcohol, ego, and witnesses with cameras, don't follow rational patterns. The aggressor has already decided that confrontation serves their needs, whether those needs are social status, emotional release, or just drunken entertainment. Traditional de-escalation gives them time to make more decisions, to continue choosing confrontation. Rizvan's technique removes decision-making entirely. By immediately closing distance, second 1, he breaks the aggressor's OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. The aggressor observed Khabib, oriented himself toward a confrontation, and was beginning to decide his next move when suddenly his observation changed completely. Now there's a different, bigger, closer threat. His brain has to re-observe, reorient, redecide. This creates a cognitive gap. The angled posture, second 2, exploits that gap. It's non-threatening enough to avoid triggering a fight or flight response that might choose fight, but positioned enough to make fight seem like a terrible option. The drunk man's brain is processing. This guy isn't scared of me. This guy isn't even preparing to fight me. What does he know that I don't? The voice, second 3, introduces authority into confusion. When people are confused, they default to following clear instructions from confident sources. Walk away now becomes the path of least resistance, the easiest way to resolve the cognitive dissonance the drunk man is experiencing. The pressure, second 4, confirms what the drunk man's instincts are already telling him. This situation has no good outcome for him. The forward step and the hand positioning aren't threats, they're certainties. They communicate, if you continue, this is what happens, and it happens fast. The exit, second 5, provides a fate-saving escape. The shoulder touch and single word command give the drunk man something to tell his friends later. That huge bodyguard kicked us out sounds better than, I got scared and left. Rizvan gives him the narrative he needs to preserve ego while still accomplishing the goal. Separation. Why Rizvan never punches. In 30-plus confrontations, Rizvan has thrown exactly 0 punches. This isn't pacifism or restraint born from kindness. It's pure tactical calculation. The moment Rizvan throws a punch, even a justified defensive punch, everything changes. Lawyers get involved. Surveillance footage gets reviewed. Witnesses get interviewed. Media picks up the story. Khabib's bodyguard assaults fan. Civil lawsuits follow. Criminal charges become possible. Even if Rizvan is completely cleared legally, and he probably would be, the damage is done. Khabib's brand suffers. Future venues become hesitant to host events. Insurance premiums increase. The cost of one punch, no matter how satisfying, far exceeds any benefit. More importantly, punching means Rizvan failed. His job isn't to win fights. His job is to prevent fights from happening while appearing to do nothing at all. This is the Dagestani philosophy that most people miss when they watch Khabib fight. It's not about being the toughest guy in the room. It's about making toughness irrelevant through positioning, pressure, and control. In the mountains, Rizvan's instructor Magomed used to say, "The bear doesn't need to prove it's a bear. It just is, and everyone knows." The 30-plus encounters Las Vegas, 2018. The casino incident described above. Moscow, 2019. A Russian oligarch's drunk son tried to challenge Khabib at a restaurant. Rizvan positioned himself, spoke 3 words, and the son apologized. Abu Dhabi, 2019. A group of 5 men surrounded Khabib outside a hotel. Rizvan identified the leader, closed distance, and the group dispersed in under 10 seconds. New York, 2018. Post-UFC 229, an angry McGregor fan followed Khabib into a hotel lobby. Rizvan intercepted at the elevator, used the technique, and security never needed to intervene. Paris, 2020. A professional fighter, not UFC, wanted to test himself against Khabib's team. Rizvan's positioning and pressure made the man rethink his life choices in real time. The list continues across 3 continents, different scenarios, different threat levels. But the technique remains consistent. 5 seconds, 5 steps, 0 punches. What this means for regular people. Most people reading this aren't 6'4", 250-pound Dagestani security specialists. They can't replicate Rizvan's physical presence, but they can understand and adapt the principles. Distance management matters more than size. Closing distance decisively changes dynamics. Posture communicates before words do. How you stand determines how people perceive threat levels. Voice tone beats voice volume. Low, certain commands work better than yelling. Pressure creates compliance. Small forward movements at the right time make opponents retreat unconsciously. Exits need to preserve ego. Let people save face while still achieving your goal. The 5-second technique isn't about being the toughest person. It's about being the most psychologically prepared, the most tactically sound, the one who controls the situation before it becomes a situation. Rizvan is still Khabib's primary bodyguard. He still uses this technique regularly. He still has never thrown a punch in a professional capacity. And somewhere in Dagestan, young men are still being taught this same principle. Control the distance, control the positioning, control the pressure. Make fighting unnecessary by making it unthinkable. 5 seconds. 30-plus encounters. 0 failures. The technique works not because it's violent, but because it makes violence obsolete. 5 seconds. 0 punches. 30 confrontations ended before they started. That's the Dagestani way. Control without chaos. Pressure without violence. If this breakdown changed how you think about real-world confrontations, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment. Could you pull off Rizvan's technique in a real situation? Next week. The training method Khabib's team uses that you've never seen. Don't miss it.